Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Two Old Bloggers, your no-holds-barred Vikings deep dive with Darren Campbell and me, Dave Stefano. Right now, the Minnesota Vikings are in full reset mode after the wild 2025 spending spree that sort of went sideways. They're slashing cap space, starting this week, way over, but ending up, thanks to restructures like TJ Hockenson's new deal, saving over $5 million. That's for Hockenson, and keep him in purple. Plus, Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, and Byron Murphy's tweaks of their contracts. They flipped it around to where we now have cap space. Yay! Big names on the move. Aaron Jones, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, likely out the door or traded. Jonathan Greenard trade buzz is heating up and is the focus of this show today. Could they really shop their top edge rusher for a second rounder? Running back room needs a revamp with Jordan Mason stepping up, but he's going to need some help. Both are bargain free agents like Rachaad White or Kenneth Gainwell. Could they be the answer? And QB competition for J.J. McCarthy. Geno Smith rumors swirling, or maybe even the diminutive one in Kyler Murray. We'll break it all down. Cap chaos, potential trades, free agency plans, and what this means for 2026. So buckle up, SKOL Nation. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikingsland with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey there, Darren. How are things in the great white north?
Oh, it can't be too bad. It's a Sunday, Dave, and I'm not working, so everything's good. Everything's good. And here to talk Vikings football, which I always enjoy immensely, especially with the folks who show up week after week after week to listen to you and me talk about the Vikings on Two Old Bloggers. We appreciate you all.
Yes, we do. And who have we got in with us today? We've got Justin. We have Boofy Guy. There's a new one. Welcome to the show, Boofy Guy. We have the Drewster, and his center list comes out tomorrow, which may be needed for this year's draft. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to reading it, Drew. We have Raymond, a disgusting act is here. And anybody else that I miss, I apologize and sorry, but I'm already behind on the comments. So we're going to get this thing going. As I stated at the beginning, we're focusing on the Jonathan Greenard trade, but we'll get to that later in the show. First off, in theme one, we're going to be discussing how to get under the cap. Mm-hmm. And wrong one.
Yeah, it's all right.
Always.
So many buttons.
I know. But we're talking about literally getting under the cap and how the Vikings did it.
Yes, as the combine last week was combine week, of course, big focus. But during that time, and you know, this is the time of the year where you're getting close to free agency, Dave, and so teams are all jostling to, if they need to find ways to get cap compliant. And the Vikings were also one of those teams this week because depending on who you read, they were anywhere from 43 million over the cap to 45 million over the cap, thereabouts, but, you know, significantly over the cap. So we were all wondering, and have been talking for the past 2-3 months about how the Vikings were going to get cap compliant. Well, this week or last week, the leaks started coming out on the stuff that the Vikings were doing or going to do to get into the, back in black for the cap. Nothing's been confirmed or official, but they're.
I've got AC/DC rolling through my mind when you said Back in Black.
That's what you should. Hell of an album. One of the best. But just the rumors, nothing official yet, but it's pretty much official when you know who put out those tweets and rumor and social media posts. Like the Vikings are looking to, they're going to get rid of Aaron Jones Sr., Jonathan Allen, and Javon Hargrave. They're going to try to trade them first. That's probably not going to work, so they're going to end up cutting them when the league year starts. Ryan Kelly announced his retirement on Friday. If he hadn't have announced his retirement, the Vikings were likely going to be cutting him as well. And then we also learned this week that the Vikings were open to trading Jonathan Greenard. We'll talk a bit more about that in theme 2, but Greenard was part of the 2024 free agent class, not the 2025, but you get what we're throwing down here, Dave. It really looks like, and then the Vikings have done restructures with various players, Justin Jefferson, Byron Murphy Jr., et cetera. We're going to talk about the TJ Hockenson redo, which freed up some cap space as well. But when you look at the releases that the Vikings are doing in particular, it's pretty clear what the Vikings are doing here in 2026 is they are trying to undo their big free agent spree signing from 2025, Dave. And, they're doing that because it did not work out the way we had hoped it'd work out. And so, they're getting to that. But the Vikings went all in 2025 with a lot of their signings, and it didn't work out the way we all hoped it would. That doesn't mean, Dave, and Luke Braun and Tyler got into this on X's and SKOLs, your X's and SKOLs
Thursday night. Yep.
On Thursday night, talking about how, I feel that, Allen and Hargrave and Aaron Jones, Ryan Kelly too, it's not that they played badly. And in the case of Ryan Kelly, he played excellent when he was in the lineup. He just wasn't in the lineup very much due to injuries. But it's not that I think that Allen played horribly or Hargrave played horribly. They did a lot of the things that the Vikings wanted them to do. But the problem was that a lot of these signings they didn't play well enough to make up for what was the biggest mistake that the Vikings made in the offseason, which was believing that J.J. McCarthy was going to play well enough to get the Vikings to be a Super Bowl contender, even if some of their bets in free agency didn't pay off as best, in best case scenario. And that was the biggest mistake they made. The Vikings went all in. They signed a lot of 30-something guys who the chances were they weren't going to produce. They might get injured, or they weren't going to produce as well as they did in their prime. And in the cases of Aaron Jones, Jonathan Allen, and Javon Hargrave in particular, that and Ryan Kelly, all of those things happened. Either injuries bit them or they didn't play as well as they did in their prime, which was to be expected because they're not in their prime anymore. They are 30 plus years old. And most NFL players, unless you're a quarterback, aren't playing at the highest level you played at in your career at those ages. So that was what the Vikings did. So the Vikings have to make a course correction. They are doing that now. But what does that mean for upcoming free agency, which is a few days away and is one of the funnest times of the year, one of the most anticipated times of the year for every NFL fan of every NFL team? What does that mean for 2026? Because, the Vikings right now, they've done a lot of work and they have gotten cap compliant. As of the TJ Hockenson redo, which got announced yesterday, by my math, which is terrible, the Vikings are about $6.5 million under the cap right now. But as we know, that's peanuts. That's just barely enough to get you money to sign your draft class, which is going to happen in April, but before free agency happens. The Vikings are going to still have to do some things to be players at all in free agency. And I think what you're looking at as far as free agency in 2026 is it's going to be similar to 2022, when the Vikings also were up against it on the salary cap and had a bit of an aging roster and were trying to figure out what to do. And what they did that offseason, if you remember, is the only big move they made in free agency was signing Zadarius Smith. Everybody else was kind of tier 2 or tier 3 free agents, the signings like Jordan Hicks, like Harrison Phillips, like Chandon Sullivan, who was be a tier 5, actually, not a tier 3, but a Johnny Munt, Jonathan Bullard, these kind of guys. That was the bulk of the Vikings free agent class in 2022. And I think that's what you're going to see this time around. The Vikings are going to have to go looking for undervalued guys and guys that they can get that they think might have an opportunity to outplay their contract, but maybe aren't really highly valued in the market. And that might be a bummer for a lot of fans who like the big name signings and the Jonathan Allens and the Zadarius Smiths. But it doesn't have to be the end of the world, Dave, in my mind, because I've said it so often when it comes to free agency. Free agency is a lot of times you're paying it's fool's gold. You're paying for past performance. That's what the Vikings did in 2025. They paid for past performance. I think they knew that they were doing that. They just felt that even if Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave and Ryan Kelly couldn't play like they played when they were 27 or 28, they were still going to be better than the guys they had in those positions last year, and they'd still perform at a better, higher level than those guys had. And I think in a lot of cases they did do that. But sometimes when you have to, I hate to use it, but when you're searching in kind of the bargain bin for free agent signings, you can get good value for money there. If you look at the 2025 free agency, Dave, the best free agent signings the Vikings made were Eric Wilson and Isaiah Rodgers, because they signed them for very, very team-friendly contracts, and they got 2 starters and 2, I think, high-quality starters last year for pretty reasonable money. I mean, Eric Wilson was a hell of a player last year, one of the best blitzing linebackers in the NFL, caused all kinds of problems for all kinds of teams, and his salary cap hit was $2.6 million.
Fantastic.
That is tremendous value for money. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, not so much. But again, it doesn't have to be the end of the world if you aren't going to be a key player in free agency in March. But it is going to mean that the Vikings, particularly their coaches and their scouting staff, they're really going to have to earn their money here in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, because they don't have a lot of cash to spend, but they do have holes to fill. And they're going to have to find, again, undervalued guys, diamonds in the rough, who can do what Eric Wilson did last year and what Isaiah Rodgers did last year for the Vikings and outperform by quite a bit their contracts. And they're going to have to do it. And people might doubt that they can do it, but they have done it with guys like Eric Wilson and Isaiah Rodgers, and they're going to have to do it again. And again, it's not such a bad thing. For me in free agency, I'm okay with 1 or 2 high profile signings, but hopefully if you've built a good team, that's all you really need to do.
Yes. Hopefully. Keyword.
Yes.
I just wanted to answer Disgusting Act. He asked if anyone can see his comments. I can see them.
I can too.
So can Raymond. So there's your answer there, Disgusting Act. Your comments can be seen. Now, I wanted to talk about TJ Hockenson. They reworked his deal last night. What they did, they cut off 2027 off his initial contract, and they saved $5 million, gave him a pay decrease, but in the process of it, he's going to be a free agent after this season, which is okay. We will not get a comp pick because of how we reworked the deal, but it motivates TJ Hockenson to play the best he has ever played, I would think, because he's going to be in a contract here. And it's simple. It's, whether we have a bonus conversion like Justin Jefferson or Kristen Darrisaw or Byron Murphy, the Hockenson trade was a rework, in other words. And it works best for him, and it hopefully will work best for us. Now, if he comes out and balls out and is just the MVP of the Minnesota Vikings in 2026 and takes us all the way to the Super Bowl, scores the winning touchdown, then we'll talk about re-signing him. But if not, he'll be a free agent, and people will get what they wish for, and he's being paid less. So let's see. I think it's going to be a great motivator for him, and it opens up more space for us. And as I saw from, who was it? I think it was Biggs, maybe. Somebody said we're about 36 million under right now. And I've seen around those numbers too. And we could still do some more finagling of contracts. We haven't touched O'Neal yet.
No, that's right. And he's kind of a big one, right? But the interesting thing with this whole Hockenson redo is, for me, is the taking off 2027 for where he's under contract by the Vikings. I think if you've got TJ Hockenson, who will be a free agent after this season, I think it opens up, and it's wide open. It opens up the Vikings drafting Sadiq at number 18 if he's there, because
that's possible.
Because, like you always say, Dave, the whole thing about you're drafting the tight end for your next team, but often tight ends don't have a hard time making an impact in their first season unless you're a Brock Bowers or Trey McBride.
It's very rare, very rare.
But you got Hockenson. If you draft Sadiq at 18, he's not going to have to be the number one guy this season, but he'd be ready to be the number one guy in 2027 when Hockenson, and then you don't have to pay Hockenson so much. It would be a bit of a luxury pick, though, to pick Sadiq at 18, considering somebody else mentioned about, we need a center, we need a cornerback, we need a running back, we need this, that.
We need a whole bunch of stuff. Yes.
But it does open up. We talked about it last week. I think a little bit less. I feel a little bit less certain about that now when you consider the people that were releasing. I didn't expect Allen to get released because of the salary cap implications of it, but we've got a few holes there. But we talked last week about the Vikings have a roster where best BPA is in play at 18. Mm-hmm. I think it still is, but when you're releasing guys like half of your starting or 2/3 of your starting defensive line, and it opens up more holes and maybe makes you a little bit less, the Vikings, their options a little bit less open, I guess, on that BPA. We'll see, though.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we will see. And there'll be more moves between now and Wednesday, and probably even after Wednesday when we start possibly signing players on Wednesday. That may or may not happen, and we'll see how it goes. We should at least sign some of our own free agents, like Mr. Wright, hopefully Eric Wilson, etc. That are on the list.
I mean, there was I think it was Caller who was writing about that he was hearing that Wilson might get anywhere from 7 to 10 million on the market, and he doesn't, and the Vikings aren't going to be able to. They're going to be able to afford that one for Eric Wilson. Mm-hmm. And I saw Drew Bunting talking earlier. There was a little bit of center talk, which I love. He was saying Logan Jones from Iowa was his guy. And when we did centers, Dave, one of the guys we mentioned was Logan Jones, as well as Slaughter. I thought Logan Jones would be a good target for the Vikings in round three-ish, thereabouts, maybe a little bit later. I don't know. There's some questions about whether he would be ready to start next year, though. And maybe you don't have to if you can stick Blake Brandel in there as a stopgap measure. Again, lots of stuff, going to be lots of interesting stuff to talk about here over the next month and a bit.
Oh, there is. All right. That was the end of theme 1, and now we head to theme 2. And this one is going to be focused on
the running backs.
Yeah. Who's going to join him?
Yeah.
Jordan Mason.
Jordan Mason. Indeed. When, as folks who watch this show all the time, which is a lot of the people in the comment section, they know that we just wrapped up our last one last week, our positional analysis after the Viking season is over. We go over every position and look at what the different positions look like, who might stay, who might go, who might we bring in. And running backs was the second position that we looked at way back in January. At that time, we talked about how Aaron Jones Sr., we felt he was a goner, mostly because for two main reasons: his age and also the salary cap hit that the Vikings would sustain if they kept him next season. At an age where he was 31, he'd be 32 in December. We just didn't feel that the Vikings, especially when he missed a lot of games last year, the Vikings weren't going to keep him at that salary cap level. Well, we learned this week that the Vikings are not going to keep Aaron Jones around, that they're right now looking to trade him. And nobody's going to trade for Aaron Jones when they know he's going to get released. I guess you got to try these things, Dave, but it never seems to happen that you get you get any sort of trade for somebody that everybody knows you're going to release. So the Vikings are going to release him when the league year starts. And it's a very defensible move. It's a very not an unexpected move, but Aaron Jones was the Vikings starting running back last year when he played. Mm-hmm. And so the question becomes, if you're releasing him, and the Vikings are, who's going to take his role in 2026? Jordan Mason, who we just pictured there, I really like what he did with the Vikings last year. I thought he was he played exactly as advertised. Tough runner, got the tough yards, never goes down on first contact, always never has a negative run. Good in the red zone runner. Got I think he had 6 rushing touchdowns this year. All of them were like within 5 yards or beyond. Not a home run hitter, but I really like what he does. And he certainly can, he's certainly ready, and I think he can take on more of a workload in 2026 than he had this year. But again, Aaron Jones, when he was healthy, Kevin O'Connell played him as the starting running back. And Jordan Mason didn't play on third down a lot. The Vikings, probably because he's not a great pass protector. Also, they didn't throw the ball to him a lot. So there's some limitations there with Jordan Jones as to how you can use him. He's probably a guy who's best suited to be part of our running back committee type deal. And so, again, how are the Vikings? The Vikings, he's not going to be your bell cow guy who's going to carry the ball 225 times a game, I don't think. Or not a game, but a season. You're going to need somebody to pair with him and be sort of a 50-50 or 60-40 split. So who is that going to be? Well, in free agency, which we talked about back in January, the running back set to go to free agency looked pretty good, Dave. You had some strong names there. Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker III, and Rico Dowdell was in there. And also there's somebody else I'm forgetting, but here I seem to always do that. But there were some good names there. Travis Etienne. He was the other one. Javonte Williams just signed a 3-year contract extension with the Cowboys. He's off the table. The Jets have franchise tagged Breece Hall, who probably was going to be too expensive anyway for the Vikings based on what's happened. He's off the table. That leaves Kenneth Walker and Etienne in play. But now that you got the other 2 guys off, supply and demand, right, Dave? Certainly Kenneth Walker, the third, off a Super Bowl MVP, and with the way he played in the playoffs in particular, he's going to be very, very, very popular in free agency. And Etienne is as well, with the role he played on a very improved Jacksonville Jaguars offense in 2025. So they're going to be priced out of the Vikings range for sure. Which case, if the Vikings are looking to free agency to find a complement to Mason, they're going to have to look at, again, value for money, undervalued guys who aren't going to break the bank, and 2 guys who I think fit that bill. And we talked about them in January too as possibilities. One is Rachaad White from Tampa Bay, and the other is Kenneth Gainwell who played for the Steelers last year. The Vikings got a good look at Gainwell in 2025 because he killed them in the game in Ireland against the Steelers, a big reason why the Steelers won that one. And he's coming off a career year, both rushing and in receiving. Rachaad White is not coming off a career year. He actually lost his starting job to Bucky Irving. But I think both of these guys, they're guys who aren't superstars, but they are strong runners. They are excellent receivers. Rachaad White's a pretty good pass protector too, from what I've heard. And they are guys, they're both 27, so they're young enough that they've still got juice in the tank, I think, and you can expect them not to fall off a cliff and produce well. I think that, these are two guys that the Vikings should look at seriously and may look at seriously. I think at best they're getting like a 2-year contract, which is really a 1-year contract in free agency. They're not going to break the bank. Rachaad White has been a bell cow back with Tampa Bay 2 or 3 years ago. He almost ran for 1,000 yards. Again, not superstars, but they can be a stopgap for the Vikings and complement Jordan Mason in 2026. And I think the Vikings also now, when you've said goodbye to Aaron Jones, and if you bring in, again, one of these tier 2, tier 3 free agent running backs to pair with Jordan Mason, who aren't long-term options for you, I think the Vikings are going to look at running back a bit earlier in the draft than I thought initially, to come up with a guy who's got potential to be your number one running back in 2027 or 2028. So, the Vikings last year, the running back class we heard was one of the best, one of the deepest in a long, long time. The Vikings didn't draft a running back last year, probably because they only had 5 draft picks and only 1 in the top 100. This year, right now, they have 4 picks in the top 100 already. And the Greenard, if they trade Greenard, they're probably going to get more. And I think the Vikings are going to, if there's a potential guy like an Emmett Johnson or a Singleton from Penn State who's available in the 2nd round or 3rd round when they're picking, I think it's going to be hard for them to pass up one of those guys, and looking for him to be one of those guys to be the successor to Mason, as a number one running back.
Very well could. Now, Broski Bear says you can have Swift after we cut him. Now, I don't know if they'd want to go the Swift route, but hey, I'm sure there's Swiftie fans in Chicago.
Well, Swift had a really good year last year with the Bears. He was playing with a very improved offensive line with the Bears as well. We think the Vikings offensive line should be strong next year if they have good health. I wouldn't hate it if we ended up picking up Swift. He's explosive, and we need an explosive running back. I see some people mentioning Tyson Algier from the Falcons there. I like him, but to me, he doesn't make much sense for the Vikings because he's the same kind of runner as Mason. He's a power guy. He's gonna grind out the 3-4 yard gains. Is he gonna break off a 50-yard gain very often? No. And that's the kind of running back we need. Gainwell can kind of do that for you. Rachaad White's not as explosive, but has that potential. Like Algier is strictly if you need 3 yards, I'll get you 3 yards. If you need 5 yards, I'll get you 3 yards. That's the kind of running back he is. And that's what Mason does for us. So I think he would be a redundant addition for the Vikings. I wouldn't be in favor of signing him. If we didn't have Mason, he's fine, but we do. So we need somebody who's got a bit more juice.
Yep. And Tony, I saw your post about Emmett Johnson. Yes, we went over a few weeks ago when we were doing the position reviews, running backs, and some of the ones we liked, and we very much liked Emmett Johnson. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting how the draft falls and with what direction we go in. Because we could literally go BPA, and if running back falls to our lap that we can't live without, they may draft him.
Yeah. It would I see the kid Price from Notre Dame. If he fell to us in the 2nd round we were picking, I'd almost guarantee the Vikings select him. But will he fall there? Hard to say.
Yep.
We don't.
Hard to say. Well, that ends theme 2. What comes after theme 2?
Theme 3.
And here we go. Oh, come on, David.
David still had Jordan Mason. I'm getting my players mixed up here. Combining last names and making them first names, and wow.
Oh, yes, you are. But that's and I'm the one that drank heavily yesterday. But anyways,
Hey,
come on.
We all need to let loose.
Yes, we do. All right. This week in Vikingsland.
Oh, look, the duck or loon going across the
loon.
Wow, very nice. Very nice. Fish jumping out of the water. Anyway, I'm getting
it's getting to be that time of season. At least down here it is.
Yeah, we're still ice fishing up here. It will be for a while. But yeah, wanted to start This Week in Vikings with the Jonathan Greenard trade or no trade. We mentioned it in the first theme with the Vikings being the word coming out that the Vikings are open to trading him. So this week, Adam Schefter tweeted out that the Vikings are open to trading Jonathan Greenard. And we know, Dave, you say it all the time, this is smoke season, right? So there's tons and tons of, like 1,000 tales in the Forbidden City, the old saying goes. Who knows which ones are true? In a lot of cases, a lot of these rumors and tweets we see is straight BS, smoke. But when Adam Schefter tweets things out, not so much, because he's usually getting these tweets from a general manager. Like he's getting this information from a general manager, from the front office of the team, or he's getting the information from the agent of the player who's mentioned. Like this is straight Adam Schefter. We want you to put this out into the social media sphere. So
and there could very well be a good reason for it.
Mm-hmm. So him mentions, coming out with a post that says that the Vikings are open to trading Jonathan Greenard. If he's putting it out, it feels to me like Jonathan Greenard's time as a Viking, his days are numbered, which raises the question is why in the F would the Vikings trade maybe their best defensive player in a year where salary cap wise, they've got a crunch, but they aren't tearing the team down to the studs. They aren't rebuilding, right? They're still looking like they're keeping Justin Jefferson and a whole bunch of guys. They looks like they're looking to do the best they can to put out a team that can get to the playoffs and be competitive. So why would you trade Jonathan Greenard? Well, Alec Lewis from The Athletic, when this story came out, or the tweet came out, he reported that Greenard is looking for more moolah. He's not happy with his compensation right now. The Vikings, again, who are in a salary cap crunch and are trying to find ways to work around it and they're not inclined to give Greenard that pay raise right now. And to be fair to the Vikings, Greenard is not playing for peanuts now in his contract. He's being compensated quite handsomely. But Greenard feels he needs more. So that's an issue. And it's something where, again, I feel like when you've got a player who's looking for a raise, the Vikings don't seem to be willing to give it. And Schefter gets this out into the social media. Again, when he's putting this out and this has been made public, and who knows who leaked it, but it feels to me like this is a Vikings leaked it, not the other way around. Again, it's probably something is going to happen. The Vikings don't have to trade Jonathan Greenard, of course. Again, he's under contract, but we know how these things work, right, Dave? You got an unhappy player. He's looking for a raise. If he doesn't get it, he's not going to participate in the offseason workouts and the OTAs. He's going to skip all of that. And then the front office and the coach and the players are going to get asked about it every time they're in the public. And it just becomes a very messy situation that teams don't need when they're in kind of the team building stage and training camp and preseason, and everything's supposed to be kumbaya, and you're trying to build something positive heading into the 2026 season. You don't need an unhappy player in your locker room, even though Greenard's been, an A1 citizen since he's been to the Vikings. So that, this trade, it feels like it's, if the Vikings don't have a change of heart, that this is going to happen. And let's get real about this. If the Vikings do trade Jonathan Greenard, it makes them, I think, a worse team in 2026, because I think Jonathan Greenard's been excellent for the Vikings in the 2 years he's been with us. I know last year he only had the 3 sacks, Dave, but that was a combination of injuries. He missed 5 games, and he missed and parts of 2 others. A bit of bad luck, and he had a weird inability of not being able to close the deal when he created pressure. But if you look at his pressure numbers, they're pretty much the same last year compared to 2024 when he had 12.5 sacks. So he's still an excellent player, and whoever gets Greenard, if he gets traded, they're going to get a very good player, and they're going to get a player I think who's going to really help that team's pass rush. I hear the Vikings are. I think the cutoff point for them is that they won't trade him for anything less than a second rounder, and that you kind of wonder about that, Dave, because Max Crosby just got traded to the Ravens on Friday. 2 first rounders, one this year, which is number 14 overall, and one in 2027. And so people are wondering, like, why can't the Vikings get a number 1 for Greenard? Well, my feeling on it is, you look at Crosby, Dave, they're both the same age. They're both 28, about to turn to 29. But Crosby has about 30 more sacks over that span of time than Greenard has. He's had much more All-Pro and Pro Bowl selections during that time. He's just a much bigger name. And, and I think that the league overall, even though I don't think there's a big difference in talent-wise and the impact that Crosby has compared to Greenard, I think the league thinks that. And so that's why, and the Ravens certainly thought that. So that's why the Ravens ponied up 2 first-rounders for Crosby. And you kind of wonder if the Ravens contacted the Vikings about Greenard too. It's just something I wonder about before they made the deal with Crosby. But anyhow, I feel like a second rounder, that feels about right for Greenard. Maybe they can get a first rounder out of somebody, but I'm not expecting it. Maybe they can get a second rounder and a day 3 pick out of somebody for Greenard. Well, we shall see. But again, I think the Greenard trade it's going to happen. And again, it makes the Vikings a lesser team if it happens in 2026. But it does open up a role for Dallas Turner. I think clearly Turner will take over for Greenard and be opposite of Andrew Van Ginkel as your edge rusher. And I think Turner is ready for that starting role based on how he played, particularly the last 6-7 games of last season. But it does leave the Vikings very thin. I liked, and we talked a couple of weeks ago, how 1-2-3 punch of Van Ginkel, Greenard, and Turner looks pretty good. But if you've only got Van Ginkel and Turner, you better hope those guys stay healthy, because there is nothing behind them at this point in time if one of those guys gets hurt.
You're 100% correct. And the whole idea of trading him, I thought, was unfortunate. Why now? Now, I understand why he feels he needs a bigger payday. He does have the pressure rate that deems he should be a top 10 edge rusher. And that's what gets you thinking, well, we should at least go for a first. He's a starter, for Pete's sake. He's a Pro Bowler. You would think at first, but I understand the second. He was drafted, I believe, in the 3rd round.
3rd round, yes.
Your drafting position always carries forward with you. It extends careers when people would be cut, and it can extend paydays because somebody going, hey, he was a first rounder, so he's got to be good, right? Yeah. I can fix him. Yes. That sort of mentality. I don't know. And we can go through this whole process and no trade agreed to, and he comes back and he's part of the 3-headed monster. And I love the idea of Van Ginkel, Greenard, and Turner being, in the NASCAR package more often than not. And whichever one needs a break, they come off. I think that's a brilliant way to run the defense. But if we lose him, we definitely need to look at linebackers. We're going to look at him anyways. But now we need not just an outside line or an inside linebacker, but we're going to need an edge to bolster that up. Yeah. Do we have guys that are on the roster at the bottom end? Yes, we do. I'm thinking Bo Richter. But
who just got tendered yesterday or or Friday, yeah.
But
Like the running back situation, Dave, and like the tight end situation, if you trade Greenard, that moves up edge as a need for you in the draft. So at 18 or when we pick in the second round. Whereas when we talked about the edge rushers and I was assuming that Greenard was going to be around in 2026, I thought they might take a shot at a guy in the 6th round, take a flyer on somebody who has some elite trait, get off on the snap or wingspan or whatever, and think, well, we'll work with him for a couple of years. And then when Greenard is gone and Van Ginkel's gone, maybe this guy is ready to step in next to Turner. But you trade Greenard, then things accelerate onto how when you address the edge room. So you've got the proper depth to tide you over in case Van Ginkel in particular gets hurt. Like he was last year, he had a neck injury. Does that crop up again at some point in time in the offseason? Neck injuries are tricky. So, interesting
Brian's correct about if he's making $19 million this year and we go to trade him and he wants more money and the team that trades for him is going to expect to give him that raise, that brings down the value of the trade round-wise. It could be viewed that way. So instead of a first, I'm giving you a second because I've got to pay him $10 million a year to make him happy. But we'll see. Now, what I'm surprised at is, as I see Broski Bear here, is none of the NFC North teams are supposedly interested in him. And all three of them, the three other ones could use edge rushers. Absolutely. And he would make all three of them better.
I just don't see the Vikings trading Greenard.
If Brez says no, Bears call up and they go, click. Packers call up, click.
Broski saying we're fanboys. Correct. We cheer for the Vikings. Newsflash. but neither Dave or I look at the Vikings players in rose-colored glasses, and Broski Bear obviously didn't watch every Vikings game that Greenard played in this year, or else he would have saw a whole bunch of times and against the Bears and a couple of times where Greenard had a quarterback in his grasp and just couldn't bring him down for whatever reason. He could have had 10 sacks in the 12 games, in the 10 and a half games that he played this year. Easy if he had closed the deal on 2/3 of his pressures. And again, his pressures were very, very high. So I respectfully
one of my pictures is of him sacking the Bears quarterback.
I respectfully disagree that we're fanboys and that we're overvaluing Greenard. I think that in the NFL, he's valued, and any team wants a guy like Jonathan Greenard on their team who can get after the quarterback. He's had 2 seasons where he's been over 10 sacks, but in a couple of his first seasons with Houston, he was a 3rd rounder developing. He didn't get a lot of playing time. So be it.
And that wasn't it. Yeah, I know I had it in there. Missed it. But hey, it's going to be interesting to see whether we hear tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow at 11 Central is when the legal tampering starts. That's a joke. And when we're going to start to hear this trade was accepted and these are the conditions, it'll be signed Wednesday. And then Wednesday at 3 p.m. is when the new league year starts, and then they can just put pen to paper, 60 seconds after the new league year started.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we all know that we all learn about these signings on Monday and Tuesday anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
But it's interesting. Now,
after
Greenard, we go back to our typical number one topic.
Quarterback. Yes. One of the main storylines the main storyline for the Vikings this offseason has been who are the Vikings bringing in to compete / replace J.J. McCarthy. But that's also been one of the main topics of conversation throughout the NFL, people who cover the NFL in general, is what are the Vikings going to do with JJ McCarthy? Who are they bringing in at quarterback? And over the combine, you got various rumors again about various quarterbacks who might be connected to the Vikings. But one of them, it became very clear that one of them that might be a big target for the Vikings was, drumroll please, Geno Smith, who played with the Las Vegas Raiders last year.
One of them is the key words in that sentence.
And true. Now, for the Vikings to get Smith, they would either have to trade for him or he'd have to be released by the Raiders for that to happen. But we've also learned this week that it looks like the Raiders are going to release Geno Smith. So he's going to be open to the highest bidder, which is going to be $1.3 million or whatever it is for the team that signs him. But Smith was always a guy that was considered one of the options that the Vikings would consider to bring in to compete with McCarthy. But it's starting to sound like, based on what we read a lot this week from a lot of the Vikings beat writers, is that Geno Smith might actually be one of the primary targets for the Vikings. He might be actually number 2 behind this guy, little Kyler Murray, which is interesting because Smith is coming off a horrible year with the Raiders last year. But he's had a very interesting career, Dave, because when he started off, he was drafted by the Jets, became a starter his first 2 seasons, rookie and second year. The Jets were horse shit. They're always horse shit. But
where's our Jets fan in the chat?
Things didn't go well for Geno Smith in those first 2 years as a starter. And that's a little surprise because, again, the Jets are horseshit. And he was also a young guy. And so after that, he goes 6 seasons with 4 different teams. He's the backup, barely plays, barely gets into the game. He's holding the clipboard for them. Then at age 32, after 1 season as a backup in Seattle, and then they trade Russell Wilson, then Geno Smith becomes a starter in Seattle, and he resurrects his career. Like he looks like a totally different guy, has a couple of very strong seasons, and again, resurrects his career to where he's a guy that teams look at as a legit NFL starter who can help you if he's your starter.
Somebody's posting on the Vikings First and SKOL account, and I know who it is, and it's not me, folks.
Anyway, the concerns about Geno Smith are that, particularly the past couple of years, he's thrown a lot of interceptions. And in his whole career, when he has played, even when he was younger, he has taken a lot of sacks, which seems so that's sort of a thing that doesn't fit very well for me in the Kevin O'Connell offense, because every quarterback who's played under Kevin O'Connell has gotten sacked a lot. We don't need a guy who gets sacked even more than that, which is Geno Smith in there. And he's 36 now. Like, is he, you can talk yourself into, Dave, he's going to go to Kevin O'Connell. He's going to get to throw to Justin Jefferson and TJ Hockenson and probably now Jordan Addison. So that's the best cast he's ever had to throw to, which is true. You could talk yourself into thinking Geno Smith could come here in 2026 and be a guy who can play at a level close to what Sam Darnold did in 2024. But I'm with Drew here. I'm not in on this. I don't want Geno Smith to be the guy the Vikings pick to be the guy to compete with JJ McCarthy for a starter. I just think at his age and the way he's played the past couple of years, I'm out on that. If that happens to be the case, I'll live with it. I don't have any choice, but I'm not loving it. I don't like it. I don't want to see it. And wouldn't it be the most Vikings thing ever, Dave, where the Vikings get rid of a quarterback, Sam Darnold, who then signs with the team, Seattle, and wins a Super Bowl there. And then a year later, the Vikings acquire the quarterback that Darnold replaced. And we sign him to quarterback our team. That would be one of the most Viking things ever.
Only we wouldn't win the Super Bowl, unfortunately.
No, we would not. We probably don't get to the playoffs because none of the teams that Geno Smith has ever quarterbacked as a starter have made the playoffs.
But Geno, if he comes in and even if he gets the start, is only going to be temporary. And it'll allow JJ to have another redshirt season.
Yeah, that's true. That is one good thing about it. It doesn't. I think it does allow JJ McCarthy to. I don't think JJ McCarthy wins that battle unless he vastly improves over the offseason.
Which he could,
and he could. And it does. And if that doesn't happen, he does get to sit a year again and learn things. And maybe in 2027 he emerges as a.
And Geno got hurt last year. I don't remember for what, but he did get hurt.
He did get hurt. Point. Yeah, and he takes a lot of sacks, which increases the chances of him getting hurt.
And the whole bunch of quarterbacks that we're talking about, none of them are the perfect candidate or fit. Whether it be the diminutive one, Kyler Murray, he doesn't quite fit with KOC's offense, nor the size. He can fit in just about any car from Matchbox on up, but he doesn't fit. Geno is old. I know there are quarterbacks that broke people's mind, from Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers and et cetera, that they played into their 40s. Most quarterbacks start to go off the cliff at about 35. Geno's going to be 36. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. And it's going to be interesting to see how this offseason plays out. Hopefully J.J. McCarthy comes back, and he has taken that step. He's taken the coaching, and we do not have to worry about whoever we bring in to back him up. Now, speaking of bringing in to back him up, there's Carson Wentz.
Yes, and last week the Schefter tweeted that Wentz was expected to come back to the Vikings, which was a surprise to me, and I think to you, Dave, that he would come back where he likely isn't the guy competing with McCarthy for the starter. So that means he'd be the number 3 guy. After last year, he played 7 games as a starter with the Vikings, something like that. But now, this week, a couple of I was reading some posts from media who cover the Jets, and they were saying that Frank Reich, the new offensive coordinator of the Jets, his preferred option to be the starter for the Jets in 2026 is Carson Wentz. So Wentz might not be coming back to the Vikings. He might actually be going to the Jets to be the starter of the Jets. All I can say about that is good luck, Frankie boy. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. And now we go to Jeremy Fowler.
Well, not so much Jeremy Fowler, but a bit of good news to end things, Dave. Jeremy Fowler, he reported this week that the Vikings have placed the exclusive rights free agent tender on Jalen Redmond, the defensive tackle last year, who was a breakout star for the Vikings. And this was a move that wasn't easy for the Vikings to make because, yes, Redmond was a free agent, but because he was exclusive rights free agent, all the Vikings had to do was place the tender on him where Redmond, they place the tender on him and no team can negotiate with Redmond once they do that. And by placing the tender on him, it's 1 year vet minimum. So, based on how Redmond played last year, which was out of sight, to quote Good Times Walker from the 1970s, some folks might not get that reference, but others will. But based on the way Redmond played last year, where he outplayed Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, everybody on the defensive line, one of our best defensive players, this is, again, easy move for the Vikings to make and the right move for them to make, because if Redmond can play anywhere like at the level where he played last year in 2026. If you got him on a vet minimum, talk about value for money. That is great value for money. The thing is, though, Dave, that I think, Redmond, he, based on how he played last year and even what he did in 2024, really he deserves more than a vet minimum. He deserves a bit of a raise. And so the question becomes, now that the Vikings have placed the tender on him and no team can negotiate with him and he's under Vikings control for 1 season, do they look to extend Jalen Redmond now at a time where they'll have to pay more money, commit more money to him, but it might make more sense for them to do that now than wait a year. He has another very good year and the price goes up even more. So we'll have to see if the Vikings look at extending Redmond, maybe for 2 years at a reasonable amount of money, much like they did with Josh Metellus a couple of years ago, and see where things go. Because Redmond, especially with Allen Hargrave getting, released, well, Redmond was going to be a starter anyway, but if they're released, Redmond becomes like the linchpin of the defensive line, the top player, the guy that is going to have to really continue to produce. And so extending him, that makes a lot of sense. I think, though, with the Vikings, again, with the salary cap situation that they are at, they really have to, I think they're going to wait until after free agency is over, see where their salary cap situation is sitting then, and then look at maybe addressing this in May or June when they've got a better idea of how the whole salary cap's looking in 2026, 2027, and what dollars they can actually allocate to Redmond.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be a good investment if they did, giving him an extension, and it could be cheaper than it would be if we waited till after the 2026, and then we're going to pay full free market price. So
yeah, it'd be interesting I think, Dave, to see what happens with Redmond in 2026, because even though we talked in the first theme about how Hargrave and Allen didn't play at the level of their contracts, I think that they were still teams paid attention to them and devoted resources, particularly on blocking, to those guys based on their reputation and also part of their production. Jalen Redmond, probably early in the season, teams weren't paying a whole lot of attention to him. He was probably getting single blocked a lot of times. Well, with Allen and Hargrave out of the lineup, Redmond ain't going to get single blocked too often anymore. And so it'd be interesting to see how he reacts to that and how his play and production is affected by teams paying more attention to him and even game planning against him. It's a whole different situation for Jalen Redmond that way. And so will he get 6 sacks again in 2026? Hard to say. He might play just as well, but also he might be getting double and triple teamed on some plays.
Right. And we heard that from Allen and Hargrave that B-Flow doesn't have a defense conducive for defensive tackles.
Ask Jalen Redmond about that.
I was about to say. Yeah.
It didn't bother him at all.
It's just his B-Flow's defense wants the defensive tackles to close gaps and do the things that they do. But if they can do that and still get to the quarterback, maybe you're cold.
Yeah.
Now let's see if we have Greenard along with Dallas Turner and Van Ginkel to still help them. But we'll see.
We shall see.
Any last words there, buddy?
I don't know. Just looking forward to this week. I've got low expectations. We're talking about that off air. So it's going to be a different free agency for the Vikings, maybe certainly less, I think, high profile signings for them, I think. And there's going to be a lot of signings that are kind of like the Jonathan Bullard type signings where you're kind of like, this guy, we're signing this guy, but that's where we're at right now.
And it's going to be interesting. I saw Dustin Baker put out a tweet of all the free agent signings since I think 2000. And we've steadily increased almost every year the total number and the quality of them, but don't expect that this year.
No.
It's not with our money issues. I doubt we're going to do much. We'll do a bunch of second tier and a bunch of third tier to fill out our 93-man roster. But don't expect a huge amount. Maybe one big splash play, but other than that, I would not. But like you said, keep your expectations low and then be pleasantly surprised if they are exceeded.
And really the big thing they have to address is quarterback, Dave. And likely the big signing is only going to cost them $1.3 million anyway. So, that's not so bad, as long as it ain't Geno Smith. or Kirk Cousins.
Yes. Oh, boy. Those shows will be hot and fired if that's the case. All right, folks.
Top will go explode if Cousins gets signed by the Vikings.
What do we say?
We say SKOL Vikings, and thanks for watching, everybody.
SKOL Vikings, you all rock. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!